Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. Those tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that webpage and click on the red and white bullseye or the link in the upper left-hand corner of most pages that says Start Here, it'll take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That's called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. It's a tool I've been using for over 16 years to improve the quality of my life, manage my emotions, and to effectively turn every negative emotional experience into a flawless guidance system to improve my life, my relationships, and my decision-making. So, if that's of interest to you, click on the red and white bullseye on that page and download and read that chapter of that book. You can also click on that, a link on that page and download the actual worksheet process itself. You can download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one that contain the audio recordings of shows where people have called in and been stepped through the worksheet process, or called in and talked about some of the underlying dynamics that make it so powerful, and or given powerful testimonials about how the actual application of these tools has resulted in positive change in their lives. And if you do that, which we recommend people do soon and often, give us a call and let us know about your experience. There's also the option to go to your app store, either the Apple App Store or Google Play, and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see a glowing heart icon, which, if you tap on that, will give you completely free and private access to an app that has the Reality Management Worksheet. It has an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it has a copy of the Dragon and Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. As we are in this year, we have made the commitment to go through the Course in Miracles lessons. And the lesson for today being the 33rd lesson. The lesson for today reads, there is another way of looking at the world. Yesterday's lesson was simply, I have invented the world that I see. And so if I invent a world that I see, and it's loving and peaceful and joyful and leads me to a productive life, why would I want another way of looking at the world? Because most of us don't create a picture of the world that is loving and creative and joyful and infinitely expansive. So the commentary for today's lesson, there is another way of looking at the world. The commentary reads, today's idea is an attempt to recognize that you can shift your perception of the world in both its outer and inner aspects. A full 5 minutes should be devoted to the morning and evening applications. In these practice periods, the idea should be repeated as often as you find comfortable, though relaxed applications are essential. If you find yourself hurrying, take a breath and slow it down. Be gentle with yourself. Alternate between surveying your outer and inner perceptions, but without an abrupt sense of shifting. Merely glance casually around the world you perceive as outside of yourself. Then close your eyes and survey your inner thoughts with equal casualness. Try to remain equally uninvolved in both, and to maintain this detachment as you repeat the idea throughout the day. The shorter exercise periods should be as frequent as possible. Specific applications of today's idea should also be made immediately when any situation arises which tempts you to become disturbed. For these applications, say, there is another way of looking at this. Remember to apply today's idea the instant you are aware of distress. It may be necessary to take a minute or so to sit quietly and repeat the idea to yourself. There is another way of looking at the world. Repeat that to yourself several times. Closing your eyes will probably help in the form of application. There is another way of looking at the world, and any time I become upset, I can repeat, there is another way of looking at this particular situation. Pam Grout, in her book, The Course in Miracles Experiment, Chapter 33, is titled, The Hangover, Part 3. She quotes Craig Ferguson, who says, like all bullies, fear wants you to believe it's tougher than it really is. Pam writes, I'm happy to report that I did not see The Hangover Part 3. I didn't even see The Hangover Part 2. What this one-star summer bomb demonstrates is my tendency to repeat myself. What this one-star summer bomb demonstrates is my tendency to repeat myself again and again, day after day. I get stuck in a loop, worshiping the same thoughts into form, seeing the same things I saw yesterday. Lesson 33 assures me there is another way of looking at the world. A simple shift of perception, practiced 5 minutes in the morning and 5 before bed, unlocks a treasure chest of new possibilities. For example, Ed McMahon or his successor could knock on my door with the magazine sweepstakes check. I could make a new friend. I could get an idea for a great book or a song, or beginning a nonprofit that might change the lives of millions. The thing is, you never know. But when I blithely accept my brain's first explanation, I get reruns. I get The Hangover Part 3 of yesterday. I get reruns of my life in the past. So today, I wake to a world that's completely unrecognizable. As Guy Finley likes to say, the new can't be known. I use this lesson as today's mantra and apply it immediately anytime I feel disturbed. I am resolute that no matter how bad any event or person might look, there is always another way to look at this. So yeah, the first Hangover was kind of fun, but I'd rather see Bradley Cooper, Zach Galifianakis, and especially me starring in a whole new film than watch the same old reruns. So today's lesson, there is another way of looking at the world. Anytime I get upset, I can repeat, there is another way of looking at this. And my mind might want to argue about that. My mind might want to serve up an endless series of refutations. And it's okay. These lessons, everything about the Course in Miracles lessons so far, are here to help me usher myself into a new way of experiencing my life. So our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. We can field your questions, entertain them with you, explore what it might look like for each of us to have a decidedly different experience of life than what we've created in our past yesterdays. One of the biggest roadblocks to that is my fear of pain. And when I engage in a pattern of avoidance of my own internal pain, I pretty much guarantee I will create more tomorrows just like yesterday's. Susan, welcome.
Hey, hi, Dr. Tim. This is the most incredible lesson. And I imagine everybody feels the same. I'm calling early because I'm just hoping that this could be a sort of how do you do that kind of discussion.
How do you do what?
How do you see the world a different way? How do you go about doing that? I could see this a different way. I'm telling myself, talk about 5 minutes. It's like a day-long exercise. There's so much going on in my family, so many things that if I were in the reruns, and I sort of am, I feel as if I'm half in, half out of a whole pile of reruns of worrying about one kid of mine or another kid. I've been reading my mother's letters to me, and she's worried about all 5 of her children. The letters are filled with, oh, I'm so worried about Joe, I'm so worried about Toby. And I'm thinking, gosh, this really is generational. It's like the assignment parents give themselves when they have a kid is to mess up and then worry about them and spend the life with certain stories. But there's a void there. You were talking about avoiding pain, but I feel as if I feel a certain amount of pain for my children, I'm actually protecting them, and I've said this before. It's like being in an airplane. If I think about keeping the plane flying safely, it will help the situation. If I just get relaxed and enjoy myself, we might crash. That's an equation I've had in my head all my life. These are neural pathways that have been pounded into shape, the same shapes over and over. It is so much like addiction. I'm reading that book, We Are the Luckiest. Yeah. And it's her close call that I haven't gotten very far, but the episode in it of her on the train heading for a party she knows she shouldn't go to, buying a little bottle of something to drink, even though she's been sober for, a year or something. She's so desperate to have a drink, and yet by a thread. Do you remember that scene? It's so dramatic. She saves herself. She calls Holly, her friend Holly, I think her name was, and Holly said, do this. Holly could have probably said, do about anything. It was just a diversion off the rut. And maybe I'm talking about how you do it. But
and that's it. I mean, so how do you do it? the first thing that popped into my mind when you asked that the fourth or fifth time was to say, there's your conscious logical mind trying to figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's very clear to me, it isn't yet that clear to you, but one of the things that's very clear to me about the Course in Miracles lessons so far
Mm-hmm.
is that it is not interested in convincing us of anything.
Mm-hmm.
It is not interested in helping us figure something out. So when I get to the point where I'm thinking with my conscious logical mind and I'm trying to figure out how to do this, that, or the other thing, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And I will not have an answer that yields anything like what I'm hoping for. So how do I do that becomes just doing the exercise. Well, how do I do that? You simply read the lesson. You read the lesson that says there is another way of looking at the world. This lesson doesn't say, here's how you look at the world differently.
Yeah.
The lesson says, meet that voice in your head that says you have to worry to keep the plane up with the voice that says, you know what, there's another way to look at this.
Yeah.
And so in that process, I short circuit that mental loop that wants me to use my mind, my logical, conscious logical mind, and all of my conditioned training to try and change something that was created by my conscious logical mind and all of my conditioned training. That's the definition. That's another really good definition for sustained incoherence that's talked about in the worksheet process.
Right. Hmm.
So how do I do that is answered by simply reading the lesson. And the lesson says there is another way of looking at the world. And then when I have an upset come up, I just repeat, there is another way of looking at this upset, at this situation, whatever the situation is.
Right. Dr. Tim, you mentioned, I was asking you the other day about this swoon of anxiety that some of us get at certain times. There are no words to it. There's no event that caused it as far as we know. And you said something I hadn't heard you say before. You said it might be something preverbal. It might be a situation that was started before you had words. And so in the light of seeing the world a different way, we're also agreeing that we can not see a different way. I don't know how to put that. Because we don't know what to do with things that don't have words. But maybe it would be more appropriate to say, I can feel a different way. I don't have to feel this way, even though there's no connecting event with it.
So try it. That sounds like it might be very fruitful for you, especially in those situations where you can't exactly formulate the intellectually congruent words.
Yeah. You know, there's a part of the worksheet that Magda did, and I add it in sometimes to the goal. I want X to feel better. And she added a clause that I think is brilliant, so that I can feel better. And that's not conscious. I think that's not conscious. But if you go backwards and take that out, I want X to feel better and leave it. I want them to feel better without a reason. I don't know where I'm going with this. I think the reason brings it all back to how we create our whole world. That's all. Again, yeah.
You're not alone in struggling with this message. Someone has typed into the chat room, and she said, "This one is challenging to me. This means I'm invited to see the absence of my 3 children differently, and the cause being my former husband, and me being the victim, and my children being victims, seeing that differently." And yeah, that's an excellent example of how, despite the fact that it doesn't bring me any relief or joy to see myself as a victim or my children as a victim, but it's been so programmed for so many years, and it is so condoned and supported by the culture that it will take some consistent application of some tool. And this is a tool, right? This exercise of simply repeating the phrase, "There is another way of looking at the world." And it will take some time of repeating that and shifting into the willingness to allow another form of understanding or perception to take its place in order for me to have that experience. It's not going to happen the first time I say, well, there might be another way to look at this.
Yeah.
Especially if I have decades of experience with, the neural pathways in my mind saying, this is happening for this reason, because of this, and the only potential solution to this is to cause pain to that other person or to avoid any exposure to this situation, etc. And as long as I'm operating in the momentum of that life experience, it is a powerful impact on my life. And if I'm going to have a shift in that momentum, if I'm going to open myself to the possibility of another way of experiencing my life, I'm going to have to be willing to let it be different. I'm going to have to be willing to interrupt the momentum of my current thought process.
Gosh, the analogy with addiction.
That particular statement, to interrupt the pattern, that's what this lesson is inviting me to do. Interrupt the pattern. Don't watch the sequel to yesterday. Don't watch Home Alone 7. Right? Don't watch, Star Trek 15.
Right.
And interrupt it. And the tool is as simple as telling myself, whether I believe it or not, telling myself there is another way of looking at the world. I'm going to guarantee you, right before I turn on somebody else's microphone here, I'm going to guarantee you that you were not born with the thought in your head, you know what, to keep this plane up, I have to worry.
Right.
I guarantee you, you did not come into this world with that thought in your head. What does that mean?
Right.
It means that thought was implanted based on your life experiences, your training with your family, the accumulation, the acquiring of your language. And then it was rehearsed over and over and over again.
Right.
So let me turn on the microphone for, I believe it's Magda. Are you there, 828? Is this Magda?
It is. Hi. Did I unmute myself?
You are there.
Hey, good. Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to give credit to the person who really originated, as far as I know, the So I Can part of the worksheet that you were just talking about, Susan. And that, Dr. Tim, was David Hayes, the person who got the first support group.
I would have guessed Julie Haverstick, but so if the proper attribution is David Hayes, then let's do that.
Yeah. So, and it is, I found it to be very powerful, and very often will turn into the next worksheet, the next topic. Sometimes things are revealed by just asking yourselves, well, what is it I really want? Why do I want this to happen? So I can, it's like, whoa, really didn't know that was going on. And I wanted to also jump in on your conversation about how to do it with today's lesson. And it reminds me, and I don't know if this is applicable or not, but it reminds me of many years ago when it became very, very evident that my thinking was black and white. There was no gray anywhere, nothing neutral. It was either this way or that way. And so I was given an assignment by a therapist I was working with at that time, and she said, what I want you to do every time you have some sort of upset come up and you know that you think it should be this way, then think of 7 other ways that it could be instead. And if you have to, think of how what Joe Blow would say about it, or somebody else, if you have to pretend you're someone else to reach for those possibilities. And man, that really made a difference in my ability to see gradations and other possibilities. And I think I'm out of the black and white positions now, because very often I seem to see too many options. However, a friend of mine just a few days ago was concerned because she hasn't heard from her friend, and she said, well, my goodness, I hope she isn't blocking me because she hasn't returned my calls. and so I knew she obviously was worried about several different things, the person's health and, whether or not she still liked her and all that. I said, well, think of this. Maybe she just lost her phone. So, anyway, that's something that worked very well for me. I don't know if that would work with today's lesson at all.
Well, anything that will get me to soften my own grasping grip on the conscious logical would be useful.
Yeah.
Right? If I am still trying to figure it out, I'm just going to create more of what I've already done in the past. I'm using the process of figuring it out, and my whole life has been built around the language I was given and the way to figure things out that I was taught in this culture and in this language.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other comments or questions? We have another hand up. I can
go for it.
No,
I'm complete. Thank you.
Is this
Wonderful.
Ellen?
Yes, it is. Hi, Dr. Tim. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Ellen. Hi, Magda.
Hi, Magda. I just wanted to give my own experience with this lesson. And I think, Dr. Tim, when you say that the lesson itself is the tool, I really like that, because I think for me, because when we are seeing something that is distressful in any way, we get tense and anxious, and then when we remember the lesson,
try to make it more complicated.
Right.
We get distressed and anxious, and then we try to make it more complicated.
Right. So if we remember that there's another way to look at this, immediately I relax. Okay, there's another way. I don't know what way, right? But just that there's another way allows me to become more present. And so that's it right there. And it just, that relaxation. It's like, okay, let me just, it just calms you down. At least that's the effect it has on me. And then,
that's true.
And I can give you an example of kind of how something that really lends itself to this lesson. Like I don't know why, but I just love numbers, and it's, around 20-some years ago, I just started getting these numbers. Like I would just see like the same number over and over and over again, and I don't know why, and then I would try and figure it out. It never worked. But anyway, over time, I just, started understanding what some of this was meaning for me. And the latest number I got, and this was maybe about a year and a half ago, was 9/11. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Why am I getting 9/11? And I had no idea. So I know, like, there's no way I can figure it out. So I just, just see it. I see it. I see it. I go, okay, there you are again. There you are again. And then I just kept hearing, like, no emergency. No emergency. Normally, which is the opposite of what we normally think of when we hear 911. We think of it's an emergency. So I just kept hearing is no emergency. And so I'm like, okay, so if it's no emergency, then what is it? And then eventually it came. It was opportunity for emergence. And at first I wasn't really quite sure what that meant. And then I realized that it means that when we get into like emergency type situations, we don't get lost in our heads and think, oh, what should I do? Is this the right thing? We become totally present and do what needs to be done. And that's the emergence. Like it's becoming present. It's just becoming present and not lost in our heads not worrying and trying to figure things out, but just becoming very present and just acting, And so I realized this morning, because I was out shoveling, and I noticed yesterday when I was out shoveling, every time I went out shoveling, I kept hearing sirens. And now every time I hear a siren, or I hear like there's an intersection right behind me, there's been so many accidents. I hear an accident happening, or I hear a siren, I automatically now associate any type of emergency with, no, it's not that someone is in trouble, it's that there's an opportunity for emergence, for someone to become very present and maybe even wake up. So it's given me a new way to look at any type of emergency, what we would consider an emergency, and see it's really not a bad thing. So that's
Excellent.
a different way of looking at emergency.
Right. That's what this whole lesson's about, trying to find a different way to look at anything that would cause upset or lead me to generate upset.
Right. So now I'm able to, because right away I'll hear a siren, I'll think, oh, and then I'll be like, oh, wait a minute, that's right, no emergency. And I can relax and be present and not worry about it and know that there's nothing to worry about.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. And I just have to encourage people to, if you have the thought, how do I do this, you simply do the lesson. You realize that the thought, how do I do that, is an overcomplication of a very simple process. How do you do that? You read the statement.
You almost said complification.
Complification.
Such a great word.
Yeah, we're gonna create a few new words throughout this year, I'm certain.
Complification. Yeah. Well, it did it right there.
And then the person in the chat room who was giving us input before said that this is a cross-generational family pattern because her father also, quote, lost, close quotes, 2 children to divorce, and then he used that as an excuse to be sadistically abusive. So she recognizes that it's definitely cross-generational family pattern.
Mm.
And I like to use that to help people decide to motivate themselves to make change, because if I recognize that much of what I'm going through that's less than loving is undoubtedly part of a cross-generational family pattern, then I realize if I don't deal with it, my children are going to have to deal with it. It doesn't, these cross-generational family patterns don't get better on their own.
Right.
They just get strengthened if left to their own devices. You know, the brain cells that, neurons that fire together, wire together.
Mm.
The neural pathways that I practice get strengthened. It's just the way it works.
That much more, yeah, and it gives that much more importance to the work that we're doing, because it's not just for ourselves.
Yeah, if we can use it to motivate ourselves in that way, that might be a good tool. And again, just don't overcomplicate it. Just understand that this set of lessons in the Course in Miracles has been around and growing in its popularity without any marketing for decades, simply because of the power of their effectiveness, not because of any dogma, not because of any, million or billion dollar marketing campaign, just that enough people who've actually read the book and applied the lessons have found that it's transformed their lives enough that they share it with others. So if I'm willing to observe the impact of practicing the lesson, I might see a set of results that I'm willing to invest in and continue. And I don't have to make it any more complicated than it is. Read the lesson and read it and read it and read it. Go ahead, Susan.
I was thinking about the woman in the chat room. The business of being a parent, this is almost an argument against the lesson. And I'm just saying it because I'm aware that it's there, and I also know it too is false. But we want to help the people we love the most in proportion to the pain we felt as children, probably, or in proportion to some child or ongoing trauma. So in a way, my desperation to help came or comes from that. and I'm projecting it outward onto needing or wanting to help my kids. But since all or most parents do this, we are probably all incarnated on the earth to clean this up. And maybe it's a byproduct of having bodies which are external evidence that we're separate from one another. And if we're separate, then we're already in trouble. I don't know if you can make anything of that, but
well, my thought about it has to do with the fact that if I say I'm in trouble, that's a formulation. Mm-hmm. What if it's not a trouble? What if it's at some level that I can't even conceptualize or comprehend part of the whole purpose? So rather than trying to figure it out, why don't I just find whatever might help me get to be that, restore to that more loving state, or that more questioning state.
Yeah. Well, all of this is really juicy, helpful. Ellen's right when she said just reading or thinking the thought, there's another way of looking at this, suddenly gives a margin of breathing room. It isn't just a locked space. There's some breathing room around the edge, and if there's breathing room around the edge, then I'm looking at this lump of feelings I've always had, kinds of worry I've always had, feeling them and also feeling a kind of open margin there, as if there's a place I could step into. She put it much better than that, but she's right. There is just, you're right, in reading the lesson and thinking the thought, there's another way to look at this. It's just good.
Well, there's a whole segment on that in the Way of Mastery where they're trying to help us understand that in a moment, in any fresh new moment, there is a space of experiencing that moment before thought.
Wow.
And one of the lessons is to learn to gradually first begin to recognize that moment, that space, that free area, and then to begin to extend it microsecond by microsecond until we get an experience of it that allows us some kind of conscious logical recognition that there is this whole fresh new moment without thought, and that everything we do with thought is, Guy Finley would call it, an accoutrement. It's an add-on.
Yeah.
And it takes us out of that, of the immediacy of the new moment.
Whoa, a couple of phrases from the Course that pop to mind is, I don't know what this is for, I don't really know what this is about, and I don't need to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, the very same message is in the Way of Mastery. I don't know what anything is or is for. I don't know what my brother or sister needs in this moment. These are lessons in the Way of Mastery that we are called to step into just the way we step into the Course in Miracles lessons. The exact same message. I don't know what anything is or is for. I don't know who or what my brother or sister needs in this moment. And that recognition is intended, in my opinion, to help me put my conscious logical machinations aside and step into an experience and a questioning, it's that space of openness and questioning, like Rilke talks to us about learning to live in the question without demanding an answer.
Mm.
With
Right,
the
because
understanding that even in that moment, when I can ask a really good question, if the perfect answer were to come, I wouldn't be able to comprehend it. That the mind that can ask a really good question has to grow and expand through experience, not through lecture, not through punishment necessarily, through life experience, before it can even comprehend the answer to a really good question.
So I'm having this thought that I would love to be given permission to be joyful when I know there are struggles, particularly with my children, but if we have a pet, it's probably the same. There is a tremendous pull toward not realizing the goal of these lessons because I feel very responsible. I'm still making that equation of if I worry, if I fuss, if I think about them in an anxious way, I'm helping. And I feel as if just to give myself permission to be joyful even when things are going on is just, I keep thinking it's going to come from outside, that I can't do it myself. And I know that's wrong. That isn't true.
Well, do you remember posting something on Facebook about things that need to get trashed, these not so good ideas that need to
Yeah.
get...
Yes, I did that just yesterday, I think, or the day before.
And there's something in there about having a false conclusion that says, when you're suffering, if I'm happy when you're suffering, then we have a problem.
Right. Yeah. Or getting in between the person and his or her pain. I want to get in between the pain. I don't want them to feel the pain. It's still there. These are things I need to trash. I set the fire going, but the things keep popping back out of the trash. Yeah.
Right. We have to go in there. You have to use the wisdom that you put on Facebook and actually step into it. You have to remind yourself, if I think that because my children are suffering, it's an insult to them or it's a hurt to them for me to be joyful.
Yeah. That's the equation.
That's clearly a powerful error in thought.
It is. It's so there. I'm just going to need to just not have that anymore somehow. Grace.
Well, sometimes people are in my office and I say, they're across the room from me, and I say, can you hand me my coffee mug? And they'll say, well, yeah. I said, no, you can't. Why? Because first you have to come over here and take possession of it. And the truth of this is embodied in Michael Rice's reality management worksheet in the current 7-step version, where it says, there's this universal law that says, in order to give something, I have to first have the original. I get the original. So if I want my children to live a long, healthy, happy life, to love themselves, to appreciate themselves, to have the awareness of themselves as love, if you want to use good regulatory speech, if I want them to have good self-esteem, if I really, really want that, I have to find a way to make that my actuality.
Yeah.
Because if I don't make that my actuality, and I keep lecturing them about doing that, it's like from my drunken stupor, I lecture them about the benefits of sobriety. Well, what message do you think they're going to live out?
Boy, that's good. That's good. That really sticks it. Yeah. Right.
What part really sticks it for you?
Well, it reminds me of a friend of mine who had very, very unhealthy relationships with men. Even after she was married, they weren't acted out, but she had emotional attachments all over the place. And yet she would go to her children and lecture them about boundaries. She was not equipped. She wasn't walking the walk. She knew in her head, but she wasn't doing it. That's what got me. Yeah. Oh,
Hey, Susan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, if you recall, last Wednesday morning in your group, the thing that I read to you about your life path, it was about living from the wisdom of the heart, learning to live from the wisdom of the heart instead of being caught up in the mind.
Right.
This is your greatest challenge and your greatest potential, according to your life path number. So, and I can see it so clearly, and it's dropping into that heart space, out of the worrying mind and just into the heart space, knowing that the heart knows. The heart knows. My mind doesn't know a thing, but my heart knows.
Yeah, that's a translation job that needs to be done, because my heart hurts for my children. So my heart is, my heart's doing what my head is telling it to do, is housing a lot of pain and worry. So there's got to be several steps in there. Yeah.
Well, even if it means repeating like the lesson every 30 seconds, because
right.
I think it says in the instructions, like the moment you feel any distress, and I know when, there's a lot of things going on in your life, I mean, those thoughts are coming one right after another. So it could mean, just sitting with that like the whole day.
Mhm. I'll do it. Yeah. What a team.
Well, it seems like there's a pause in the comments, so here's someone else with a hand up.
Yeah.
Are we ready? All right. Area code 520, you're in the air.
Good morning. My name is Audrey.
Hello, Audrey. How can we support you today?
Well, I just wanted to let you know how grateful I am for doing my inner work, and how in the process of doing my inner work, I see the generational patterns that have been miscreated, that have missed the mark of love, and how I, too, created and create. And with the issues particularly around my parents, particularly my mother, with abandonment, grief, and loss. And my son's birthday is going to be in 2 days. I sat down and I wrote him a letter along with a card and a check, and I told him how very happy I am for having the opportunity to give birth to him and to watch him grow. And then I just allowed I did free flow writing, and I just let it flow from the heart of the experiences we've had together and how grateful I am for having that opportunity and having him be part of that opportunity. So I shifted. I shifted the pattern, and also in the letter, I remember writing that my behaviors may have missed the mark, but at the time I did the best I could with what I was working with, and how very proud and loving we are to have this opportunity in life to be together. And I just wanted to share, because this change, because usually I would send him a card and a check. He's going to be 56. And this change came about by my willingness to embrace the work and therefore the shift. And I want to be the example of love in action. I just sent the letter, and it is whatever it is, and it's all good, no matter what. But I wanted to say that there has been a difference in how this expansion of love is taking place in my family. And blessings, and thank you, everyone.
You're most welcome and deserving. Thank you for the call. We have a minute and a half left. Here is area code 847. You're in the air.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Ellen. Hi, Susan. Hi, Audrey. Everybody. Just a quick comment. What Ellen just said about having to correct your thoughts every 30 seconds or something like that, it occurred to me that I used to do that exercise that Dr. Rice recommends a lot about resetting your filters to,
Rachma and Kuba.
Rachma and Kuba, exactly. I used to have to do that practically every 30 seconds. And that was a really great suggestion. I think I'm going to try that, because I've been having a little bit of trouble with the exercises, the whole victim thing and all that. And I think that's going to be, resetting those is going to be valuable. I just haven't thought about that idea for a while, and just a suggestion, quick suggestion. And also, it's a support group. Come on, everybody.
All right, thanks, Mary.
Sure.
Thank you. And we are going to have a support group tonight, and I think that's a great idea. Mary, we'll have Jeannie and Michael talk about the Rachma and Kuba filters. And I'll remind everybody, thank you, Susan, thank you, Ellen, thank you, Mary, thank you, Audrey, thank you, Magda, a whole parade of callers today. And I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. And when Michael gets on, I will mention the Rachma and Kuba.